Hello, this is a little short piece on my talk in the book in a workshop titled When Bad is Good. And basically, this is a development of a talk that I have given after my cancer diagnosis about 2.5 years ago. And it's kind of on the level of that book that came out some years ago, The Last Lecture, and by a professor, and he gave what he thought was the most important items for people to understand, especially students graduating. And so life is a classroom, and there is a curriculum. There are many opinions about that, of course, but I have my own take on that based on having near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and doing spiritual practice, practicing bhakti yoga for almost 50 years. So I just wanted to give a quick little synopsis. Basically, it's what I feel most strongly about. I've also had hospice training, and I'm well aware of regrets that people have when they're facing their death, or at least the fear of death, and making peace with our past, uh, being the best person that we can, uh, understanding our life issues and acting accordingly to deal with them, seeking forgiveness, giving forgiveness, and just personal growth information, resources that can really help us change our thinking because we are what we think about. Emerson said it nicely. It could have been a verse from the Vedas. He did study that, Vedic literature from India, and he said a person becomes what they think about all day long. Or in terms of happiness, um, uh, Abraham Lincoln is purported to have said that people are about as happy as they make up their mind to be. So the importance of attitude and self-acceptance, radical self-acceptance, really being able to come to terms with our past. We are in our past, ultimately. It's certainly part of us, but really life is about what we do with what happens, like growing up. I mean, I can tell you my story. I have in so many ways. Certainly not the worst story in the world, but as a child, you don't have anything to compare it with. So people have all kinds of excuses to stay kind of stuck in their past drama or pain or abuse or things that are terrible, but you got to get on, you got to move on, you got to deal with them. I'm not talking about denial and pretending they didn't happen, but really coming to terms with them. Uh, Whatever your parents were like, even if it's a good situation, you may have some things that you don't like about it, that you feel you got a bad deal or whatever. So we have to be able to see that those can be an asset. That's the title, When Bad is Good. However horrendous it might be, you got to do something about it. And it's not, and as many people have said that, it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you instead of just reacting. This happened, and I'm never going to forgive them, and full of resentment and anger and justifying it. You can certainly do that, but as long as you give control to external things, then you're going to be stuck in the old pattern. So I don't believe you can become perfectly self-actualized, but I like to say you can be better, a lot better. But it's up to us. And there's so many tools out there, whether it's personal growth, Jack Canfield, there's so many teachers, Tony Robbins, Dennis Waitley. There's so many of them saying similar things about the power of changing our attitude and changing our self-talk. Again, accepting ourselves for who we are, and taking can't out of our vocabulary. Many people have said this. I know Norman Vincent Peale I like his stuff. It's simple but powerful. It's religiously based, and he's pretty broad in many ways, quoting from Buddha and others, and said you have to take the T out of can't. So, you know, many people just don't believe in themselves. They just beat themselves up all the time with their mind because of their past and the tapes that they've heard and internalized. So that's what I talk about in the lecture in a lot of ways. Personal growth, spiritual growth, because to me, personal growth without spiritual growth is incomplete. And by spiritual, unfortunately, today, it can mean anything. People like to say that I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious because they don't want to be fanatic. Unfortunately, also, and unfortunately, the face of religion often is fanatic and dogmatic and unattractive, at least with some of the people involved. So they say they're spiritual, but there's no real consensus even of what spiritual is. What to me it means I'm an eternal soul having a human experience, and that the body is temporary. So what are we? That's the question. Who am I? Why is there birth, old age, disease, and death? These are called the fourfold miseries in India from the Vedas. Buddhism also talks about them. Eastern, so I mean, they're all Eastern religions compared to being in the United States, but further east. So that's what I talk about, and I just wanted to be real short and real brief. And it's 6 minutes already. It's hard for me to be brief, but I'm really trying. So thank you.